Hello and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. But of course, if you're here live with us on YouTube, you're going to see a very different background. We'll get to that later. Of course, I'm your host, Clay, and with me, like always, is Katie, that almost got a glimpse of a little too much of my family earlier just a few minutes ago. But we don't need
And
to
you
get into
laughed
that.
at what I said, but we're not gonna repeat what I said,
Oh man.
even
I
though it'd
mean
be really funny.
it makes sense. You have sisters, it totally makes sense. And people could probably connect the dots there. So Katie, how has your day been?
Really crappy. I spent 45 minutes on the phone with my insurance company to only find out that the
Oh,
hospital
still having
submitted. Yeah,
that issue. That sucks.
I hit.
Absolutely sucks.
I was like, I told the guy, and Matt was in here because he was trying to keep me calm, and I was like, I'm seriously trying not to cry on the phone at this point. And the guy's like, well, there's just nothing I can do. You're going to have to talk to the hospital. And the hospital's already told me, no, the insurance company needs to tell us that we can submit this. And I'm just like, please, can somebody get their ever loving shit together so that I don't have to pay this motherfucking bill? So. And then the insurance company finally found it. And the guy on the phone was really nice. Don't get me wrong, he was super nice. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I found it. So now we can call Prisma and do all these things." And the billing department for Prisma is closed till the end of the year.
Yikes. That sucks.
It's
Absolutely
just my
sucks.
luck. It's just my luck.
Well,
So
hopefully we will talk in better light of things with Percy Jackson. That's what we're going to have as our opening crawl today. We are bringing that back to talk about a series that uh, Katie enjoys very much, a series that I was introduced to just this past week or month or whatever you want to call it. Um, Something that I am really interested in. It's going to be a very interesting review for these first two episodes. I'll tell you that. Um, and then, of course, we will get into all the nitty gritty Star Wars stuff. Now, the difference is if you're listening to this in the podcast form, you're not going to hear any of the Star Wars stuff because this is, of course, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians review, which is going to be on the GUA feed. But I'm gonna be pretty lazy with the Star Wars Alliance and probably just post the entire episode how it is. Um,
well if you're
probably
holding
I'll
them
I'll
up.
I'll I'll cut out the Percy Jackson review, of course, uh, but everything before it and then after it, of course.
So
Um,
a dual intro, if you will.
yes. So let's go
What's our
ahead.
main topic so you don't have to edit it in later? Our main topic for Star Wars Alliance is
Oh, yes, Master and Apprentice is going to be our main conversation piece. Katie just reread it today. I don't know
it's been a
how.
long week.
But I have gotten, I think, two and a half reads on that book. I have some interesting things to kind of point out because the entire reason why we even wanted to talk about it is, of course, uh, it being one of the canon books. Stuff that you were wanting to introduce to me with, not just High Republic stuff, but also the oh so slight mention of the Nameless, which is, of course, a very big prominent deal in the High Republic. So we will talk about that later tonight. But let's go ahead and jump into our opening crawl. Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Katie, I told you, and I want everybody else to know on this review, we're going to get into the stuff that we love about the show. But I think I need to air out some things that I don't like about the show as somebody who is very fresh in the book, who literally just read it for the first time this
Mhm.
month. So it's very odd because I'm like a new fan of the series. So uh Katie, I told you 10 minutes into the first episode I wanted to turn it off. And the reasoning why I don't like the pacing. It's moving too fast.
I would agree.
Because oh so famously, Mrs. Dodds, the Harpy Fury, whatever you want to call her, um, the first confrontation with Percy in the book is something very short. You get a small glimpse of like what she is, but you don't know any reasoning behind everything. And Mrs. Dodds lays it all out within the first 10 minutes of the show. Like she's already asking, where is it? Which is something that isn't supposed to happen until the actual quest is supposed to be taking place. Um, and all of that. So it was very odd, like the
Which,
introduction to Mrs. Dodds.
yes, and don't get me wrong, I they definitely veered like the first episode, we veer wildly from the book completely. But Mrs. Dodds comes and goes in the first 15 pages of the book. I just looked.
Yes, yes, she does. She is.
So, yeah, that
What I
that is
do
the
like,
preview for the next book.
what I do like is in the middle of the and almost I want to say like maybe even closer to the end of the book, Percy starts to remember some of the things that used to happen to him as a kid. They did that as like a like exposition dump in the very beginning of the first episode, which I
Yeah.
really did enjoy. I like because I liked how you got to see kind of the experiences he had at that point instead of him just explaining them. Um, so I liked that part. But the number one thing that I hated, and I told Joe this because Joe just dropped by and gave me my Christmas present. Um, I told Joe the Percy Grover relationship was literally cut at the knees
Yep.
at the beginning of this first episode. And I don't like that because the whole ordeal with Grover and Percy in the book is that bond is not broken like
Mhm.
ever. Like they kind of clash in the book a little bit when it comes to some conversation pieces, but they never are like, "Hey, I hate you. I'm going to be working against you and everything else." And Grover literally lied to Yancey Academy's uh, uh, uh,
Dean,
principal
I
or
guess. Yeah.
dean or whatever um, to get Percy kicked out of school. I don't like that.
I didn't really like it either because a lot of what they cut out of and I want to say it's like this is like the first 5 chapters of the book. Yeah. Because I and somehow I flipped to this exactly, but chapter 6 is I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom, which is the title of episode 2.
Yeah.
So the first 5 chapters is meant to build up Grover and Percy's relationship. But instead, what they chose to do was they chose to build and show us Percy and his mom's relationship, which is not really something they do a whole lot in the first book. That is built on a lot in the upcoming books.
And I was going to ask you that because the direction that they went with the mom, I have a love-hate relationship with.
Mhm.
So, the thing that I love about it, she is somebody who is standing up for herself, who
Mhm.
is a strong woman. In the book, and this is just a little bit of a cliche thing back when, the book was written, you know, she was a little bit of like, I'm not gonna say a damsel in distress, but just because of the situation that she was put in with taking care of a demigod
Mhm.
and having all of these different monsters after them and everything else, like she was afraid of Gabe and like put all this other stuff. And in this show, she's not afraid of Gabe. She's like yelling at him and like I liked that and didn't like that, and the reason why it
Yeah,
showed her in, like, a weird light when they were having, like, this yelling argument about, like, ordering sandwiches and, like, her eating his on the way and, like, listening to the game on the radio, like, it was a weird bit that they did.
yeah, and I have to wonder if it's because Disney was like, "We can't show, like," and I don't really feel like there's a whole lot of, like, abuse shown in the first couple of chapters. Like, it's the end of the book where Percy goes, "He hits you, doesn't he?"
And it's
And he
just a
figures that out.
flinch. It's just a
Yeah,
flinch that she does. It's not even like a full-on contact or anything. It's just the implication of like,
yeah,
"Oh, he didn't hit her now, but he has hit her in the past."
yeah, and I wonder if Disney said, "I hear that you wanna stay as close to the book as possible, but I can't let you show this, and I
Yeah.
can't." They don't wanna insinuate it at all. So, they tried to play it more safe. I don't
Mhm.
know, I think I would've just rather had them cut Gabe entirely and just had them, like, single mom and
Yeah,
stuff.
like, even like, of course, like I said in our book review, and if you would like to listen to our book review, you can always jump onto our Patreon at the $5 tier, where all exclusive shows are. Katie and I did a Patreon book club where we talked about the first book of Percy Jackson. In that review, I said that there's some things that are going to need to be updated for the modern era of things.
Mhm,
Gabe is one of those. He is not the stereotypical smell like beer, just like open gut, like just disgusting stereotypical stepdad. He does look like your stereotypical stepdad, but he's playing online poker instead of in person poker and betting on, stuff like that. So I thought that was very intriguing. But, like, he actually kind of had a conversation with Percy, which I also thought was weird because in the book, Gabe hates everybody. He just loves money, like, and loves
mhm.
himself. Like, so I'm almost with you on the idea of they probably could have just left Gabe out of this entire thing, especially with the book and series mainly going to be surrounding Percy anyway. You really don't need Gabe.
I don't know if they left him in with the intent of, like, having, like, those TV interviews where he goes like, "Oh, yeah, Percy, like, kidnapped my wife." Um, but I feel like you could have done it where, like, Percy just got suspended from Yancey and his mom takes him away. Like, it's at the end of the school year, but he gets suspended right before final exams or something, and you have
Mhm.
Yancey kinda take that place, and we go, "This is a troubled kid. He disappeared with his mom. I'm really worried about the mom." And you could have done it that way to completely just cut him out.
Well, not only that, you did bring up something. Gabe does answer the call to Yancey,
Mhm.
so it does kind of show that invasiveness and kind of like, "Hey, I rule this apartment" type thing. So
Yeah.
he does show that kind of initiative. So maybe that's kind of the stance that they're going to take with the rest of the show, and probably in comparison to the book. Um, but you know, we move on to going to the beach. Of course, this is like the beach house that they
Yeah.
always go to and whatnot. We later learn that it's the place where Percy's mom, met his dad. Um,
Yeah.
this
Which
was a
we knew that from the book, but the conversation that happens at the beach house, and I know you're about to say this, sorry, but, like, this conversation where Sally is actually the one who gets to tell him in kind of a peaceful environment that he's a demigod, that also doesn't happen in the book. That's a change.
no. It's a
And
pretty big change, and for me, I
yeah,
think it was. it was like this weird like exposition dump for like people
Mhm.
who are like, it's basically like, hey, you've never read the book, here you go. And I was
But
like,
it all happens in the car
"Eh."
ride, like,
It
with
happens
Grover.
with Grover, yes. And she does have these little back and forths with Grover in the car that like really like help you understand that she does know about gods and stuff, but not this extensively. And so like that was another thing, like in the very beginning of the episode, we like have this small little conversation with a much younger Percy with like, "Oh, is this why you named me Perseus?" And like they are at the museum and they, explain all that, which I really did enjoy.
Yeah.
But with here, like you know that she has done her homework on all of this mythology and everything else.
Which
Um
she has in the book, it's just not shown. Like,
yes.
it's like, it's thrown out in bits and pieces in the car, like, she was like, "I thought I was doing what was best for you, like, I really thought I was protecting you." So, I truly think that they sacrificed the Grover-Percy relationship so that Sally could have more time,
Yeah.
because truly, Percy is, and I truly believe this even in the book, Percy is in this for his mom. Where things turn, though, is I don't Percy takes himself way too seriously. And for a 12-year-old, you can't, I mean, like, I didn't go to public school, so I don't know what, like, at that point I would have said, but, like, I didn't know anything about mental health or ADHD or anything at that point. It
So
was
I will tell you this: the statements that he was telling his mom, like "I'm broken, there's something wrong with my brain." Um, that is, I guess, I'm not gonna say very common. It's a little common in individuals that age, and it's more along the lines of like not knowing oneself. And of course, if you go along with the psychology of it, it's the fact that he doesn't know his dad and all of these other things. And he's, it's just a mental breakdown type of thing. Um, but you're right. Like, comparatively to the book, you have somebody who's just a troubled kid because of the things that have happened in his life. And here it's on a mental health level. And I can understand the reasoning why they're doing that. Um,
it's
mental
again
health
modernizing things.
modernizing, but and of course, mental health awareness is huge in the 2020s, like, it just is. Um, so I can see where they are self-aware in that manner of taking it into the approach of the TV show. Um, and then, of course, you get Grover coming in onto the conversation, um, and this is where Percy sees that he is half goat. Um,
Mhm.
and I
He
like the
doesn't wear
reveal.
pants
He
like
doesn't
in the book.
Yeah,
He's using the mist to cover himself up, which is different.
yeah.
Um, that I kinda like that they're playing into the mist a little bit more because it is the magical elements of the show.
Mhm.
Um, I do think, like, wearing pants and, like, long pants is, like, a good way to, like, cheat not having to CGI some stuff, but I like that they're playing into it.
Yeah, yeah. But we get our first glimpse at the Minotaur here.
The Minotaur was not what I expected.
It looks so good.
Mhm.
I really liked the way the Minotaur now, I I thought it was hilarious. We see in the very beginning of the episode, Grover hands Percy
Yes,
a
the Magic the
trading
Gathering
card.
cards.
Yeah, it's a trading card with the Minotaur, and the Minotaur is wearing whitey tighties. That is a callback to the book where when they actually see the Minotaur in this car ride, Percy makes the comment, he's wearing whitey tighties. Like, what's going on? So I like the callback here. And then seeing him here fighting Percy and all of that, I think it looked really good. Of course, again, will say something that Snell always says with the modern 2020 TV shows, and even before this, people, you're making your TV shows too damn dark. I was
Yeah.
watching this at night and I couldn't see shit. Like, there's a problem. I don't like
Yeah.
it.
And I think that's the downside of them using the volume. I think if they had gone traditional green screen, it would have gone a little more bright, but they definitely did use the volume in production for
Hmm.
Percy Jackson. Um, so I think that's just the result that we're ending up with, really and truly. Game of Thrones is a little bit different because I don't think Game of Thrones, like House of the Dragon, uses the
Hmm.
volume, like, but I don't know. Yeah, it was this scene in particular was way too dark. I feel like the rest of it, they kept it pretty light and bright. Like even the capture of the flag, I always thought of the capture of the flag as like after dinner, but the capture of the flag is during the day in this. Um, Getting ahead, but yeah.
But but we get the scene, of course, the like very heart wrenching scene of Percy's mother, quote unquote, dying.
Mhm.
Um, and it's so weird here because in the book we get a lot of like these explanations of like the emotional fear that Percy has in this moment and like anger and how his strength is building up and all this other stuff. You don't get that narrative here. So you're just seeing it on screen. And there's a lot of just stuff happening in silence at this moment,
Yeah.
like fighting the Minotaur, pulling off his horn and like stabbing him and stuff. S- Seeing Riptide here was
I
different.
I appreciated it though, because that was like probably the one thing in the book where I was like, he's doing this with a jacket. And so handing him a weapon, at least for the first part of it, I appreciated.
And it was Mr. Brenner was the
Yep.
one that told him like, "Oh, you're going to need this."
Yeah.
Before he left Yancey Academy. Um which I do like that it's a classic ballpoint pen with a cap and just like the
Yeah,
book.
versus the movie is the click.
Yeah. Um but then, just like I will say when it comes to the adaptation from book to TV series, they're going step by step by the book, which I do appreciate. It's just the way they are telling that story is something that I'm not necessarily loving.
Yeah.
Um,
And in particular, going into the next episode, they they try to build Luke up more
mhm.
instead of Annabeth. They put Luke in Annabeth's shoes. Um because like Percy is supposed to do like a lot of training with Annabeth and like oh like okay this is who she is but like we literally hear her say the you drool in your sleep line and then I
And then
think
you
maybe she
don't
gets
see her
one more
again.
line. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get it at the very end right before capture the flag where she is in the bathroom after he's like torched Clarice and her friends.
Yeah, and it's really weird because like there's precedent for her being there in the book where it's like, oh, she's giving him a tour and everything, and the Aries kids just kind of take him away and throw him in the bathroom, and so she's wanting to protect him in some sort of manner. And in the show, she's like there's even this like awkward back and forth where Percy's like, "Are you stalking me?" She's like, "Yes." He's like, Okay, what do you want?" "Oh, I just want you to know that I want you on my team for capture the flag."
Yeah.
Really weird exposition there, but
Especially when in the book, it's like they have to be on a specific team according to their cabin. It's
yeah.
not like, oh, one member of this cabin can go with this team or whatever. Like it's all so that was super weird to me. I like Leah as Annabeth. I think what we
She is
saw,
doing, yeah, I do like, I think almost everybody as their character.
yeah,
The even the actor that's playing Luke, like
yeah,
for
I
those
like
who
him.
don't read that haven't read the book, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like I think that the relationship that they're building with Luke is going to feel you're going to be able to feel it when, of course, things take for a turn. Um, but we
I
get to
the
see a
biggest
lot
thing
of
I
the
don't like is just angsty Percy. I don't like the angst.
it's very weird comparatively to the what the actor has done in the past. Like seeing him in the Adam Project and then seeing him in here, it's a very weird change. He was very like uplifting and kind of like poppy and bubbly in the Adam Project, very snappy. And in here he's very quiet, very angsty, and it's like I was kind of hoping for something different. Like I don't
Yeah,
know what's going on here.
like, Percy is just a very positive character, I think, and so I still like Scoble in the role. I just and it's more of a question of the writing, and maybe
Mhm.
he's going to, like, have that hope reignited. But I also feel like because, we talked about in the book review, how Riordan was very like, they had said, like, "Oh, Percy's not doing this for his dad," and you could say the angst is, like, him, like, fighting for his mom and, like, grieving and stuff, but man, he talks a lot about and I don't remember him being, like, this vibrant about, "Yeah, I need my dad to notice me." Like, I need my dad to notice me. Like, he needs to be here. I just feel like that was a lot.
Well, okay, so explain to me if you can, because I don't understand why the flip when it comes to the burning of the food. There's the moment where Luke tells Percy, "Oh, we do these offerings. The gods love the smell of the food, blah, blah, blah." And then the very next scene, you see Percy with the candy and he's burning it, talking to his mother instead of the in the book version,
Yeah.
he burns the food and whispers to the gods, "Please give me a sign of who you are." Like,
Yeah, and I think that was maybe them trying to play the balance of they want him to be doing this for his mom, and so he's talking to his mom instead. But like Luke is very specific and says like the gods. So it's like why would I guess Percy could just be I, I
it's
think maybe
like a different
maybe
way of
for
grieving, maybe. Like, I'm
yeah,
not entirely sure the what the headspace was when it comes to like
yeah,
writers being like, "Oh, this is totally what Percy would do." Like, I don't get it.
yeah. And yeah, because I think him like going out and when because he doesn't burn food on his own in the book. He just does it at like the dinner. And I think maybe if you had even gone like if he had done the little line where he's like, please just somebody tell me who you are, like talking to his dad kind of thing. And then maybe you do like the can burning scene, but Luke is specific and is like, yeah, you give up what you don't want to miss off your plate. And he doesn't want to miss the candy that his mom gets him because that's the tradition. She always gets him that candy.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I'm also like, eh. I still trust Briarden completely, and I really enjoy what I'm seeing. Like the wood nymph lady that talks with Grover when he goes to the Council of the Cloveland Elders, like she looks
So
phenomenal.
this is, I assume, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm assuming this is something that is brought up in other books
Yeah, the
because
nymphs play a bigger part in
this was
and you can
not in the
see him
first
like
book at all.
yeah, because Grover's going to the Council of Cloven Elders for a different reason. In the book, he goes because they're still not sure that he brought Percy to safety.
Yeah.
Whereas here, they're like, oh yeah, you brought him to safety. You're good, dude. Like, no problem.
Well, and the thing is with comparing this to the book, in the book, we just see Grover go and it's mentioned that he meets with the council. Here, we get to see like a very like intimate moment with the nymph of like, oh, you're picking at your horns, like you need to stop that. Like
Yeah.
I thought it was sweet, but for me, unknowing of these other books, I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what was going on. Like I was like, what's going on
And
here?
I don't think she's mentioned directly by name, but, like, Grover does have, like, relationships with nymphs, like, in the future, like,
Okay.
that's who satyrs primarily date and stuff,
Okay.
so
And the other thing that is literally non-existent in the TV show, which I did kind of make a big point in our review of the book that I really enjoyed, is that names mean something. Words have power. Non-existent. There was no mention of not being able to say the Minotaur or you need to say kindly ones or
well, but Percy also doesn't like, I think the Kindly Ones takes place in the next one because of the bus scene and everything.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, the Minotaur, yes, but, like, Grover does give Percy, like, a look that is like, "I don't I
Well, like
don't like you
even
saying
but
that."
even like the moment where Percy wakes up and sees Dionysus, like he calls him Mr. D, and then Grover pulls him and is like, "That's Dionysus."
Well,
Like
because
that was weird.
he only says Dionysus in that case because Percy's insulting him. So
Yeah,
he's trying to
that's true.
explain, like, "Hey, this is Dionysus, like, he could turn you into a bunch of things."
I So of course this clearly was not in the book, but it also adds flavor to, of course, the humor of the actors that were in the scene. Dionysus acting like Percy's father, I
Yes.
actually really thought that was funny. And even when Mr. Brenner uh does explain like, hey, Dionysus is not allowed to have any alcohol or adult beverages, and demigods can kind of go around the rules, and like basically explaining if you were to give him alcohol, he wouldn't be breaking Zeus's rule. I
Yeah.
liked that kind of like explanation of it. I was like, okay, that's not something that they necessarily did in the book, but adding that small little touch to the show to, give it its own thing. I really did enjoy that. So I like that. Um it is these small little moments of being somebody who just read the book, being a newer fan, and seeing how quickly things are going and seeing how some things are being changed. And it's when I say some things, it's really just the Grover relationship with Percy. It doesn't seem as a big of a staple to the show as it was in the book.
Yeah. And, like, finishing up with, like, the capture the flag stuff, like, I just don't like how they have Annabeth go about doing that. Because, like, in the book, it's done very differently it's because the relationship was built up a little bit
Mhm.
more with her and Percy, so Percy kind of, like, trusts her a little bit more, but Percy spends a lot more time in the water in that fight than he does, and you can, like, kind of feel that a little bit more in the book because of writing style. But, like,
Mhm.
in this, I can see where it would have been hard to articulate, "Oh, he feels stronger, he feels faster." But, like, you could have also, like, had him zoom in and kind of, like, realize, like, he's got better reflexes in the water.
And
And
that's what
I
I
don't
mean
like
when it
Annabeth
comes to
pushing him in. That's, like, the
yeah.
final thing. I didn't like that at all.
It's so weird. Just like the small things that they're doing that kind of rubs you the wrong way. And I totally understand. The moments of him being in the water, it should give him more strength and everything. And it's supposed to, as people who have read the book, I guess you would have to just remember that when facing the Minotaur as well, because it was raining. And so he is going to be absorbing that water and everything else. But
Yeah.
I just wish there was just a small little cut or zoom in or edit that kind of gives him like like a gripping of the fist to kind of show that he's like angered or enraged or some sort of emotion to him. And it's there's nothing that gives me that in these scenes, and it's unfortunate. I do like, remind me again, the child of Ares, what is her name? Um
Clarice.
Clarice, yes. When her staff broke,
Yeah,
I loved the emotion of her like just
she was great.
screaming out loud. I love that. Like, I think that was the most emotion I got out of the entire show. Um, and her, her big thing was, hey, uh, I think you're a fraud. And I'm gonna prove you to be the fraud that you are. Which wasn't necessarily the take that was in the book, but of course, doing your own spin, you kind of have to do something different. And I'm okay with this because, of course, the one thing that was said in the book is that everybody wants their chance at the Minotaur. How can this one newbie
Yeah,
kill the Minotaur? And so, like, you can connect the dots, and I think that's very, very cool. Um, but then, we get to the end. You see the trident. You see him get his own cabin, and then the episode ends. Like, that's it. Like, we haven't gotten anything past that. We're gonna move, of course, further into uh we get the fact that, like, oh, Percy is the known thief of the bolt, but that's it. And we learn that uh Percy's mother is not dead. That, like, just Grover coming in and be like, "Your mom's not dead." Like, that was weird. Like, for me,
yeah.
I was like, eh.
That's what and, like, especially the angsty at the end. I also don't like how and maybe they're gonna do the Oracle in the next episode, but the Oracle is such a huge part of future books. Like,
Mhm.
I need the Oracle. Um, sorry, and my sister keeps texting me because she just finished it, and she said she enjoyed it. She did agree about, like, Annabeth is a little weird. Um, so, like, the writing, I mean. But yeah, the whole ending part, it goes back to, like, Percy being, like, super angsty, like, he's supposed to have time in Poseidon's cabin to kind of go, "Okay, I can kinda breathe through this." He's supposed to have the dream with, like, right?
And we
That
we
because
are
that's the
seeing
timing.
we got 2 dreams here in the show. In both episodes, we got 1 dream. And by this time, though, he's already having dreams of Zeus and Poseidon
Yeah,
fighting over the bolt. We haven't gotten that yet. Instead, we are getting the dreams of somebody whispering to him. If you've read the book, if you haven't read the
AKA
book, well, I
Cronus,
was good.
probably.
Yeah, if you haven't read the book, skip ahead. But it's Chronos. Like,
Sorry.
it's all good. I mean, the book is how old, you guys. You should have read it. I mean,
Almost 20 years old.
I didn't want to get spoiled, so I read the book. So we're getting teases of Kronos. But I would also have liked the idea, because for one thing, in the book, the big thing that I think Riordan wanted to show in the book is that Percy is smarter than everybody thinks he is.
Yeah.
And so he's connecting dots. He's making these decisions. And in the book, he comes up with the plan to save his mother on his own.
Yeah, and he puts together that, like, "Oh, the Minotaur wouldn't have crushed somebody to gold dust. It would have been liquid," which is what Grover mentions.
Yeah,
And
and then he's like, "Oh, well, if all of these gods are real, then the underworld must be real." And then that starts to like, it starts to build a plan within itself. And Grover coming out here and just saying, "Oh, your mother's alive. She's in the underworld." It's just like,
it cuts all of that out of that development
yes.
out for Percy, which gets them to the goal, right, which was the same in the book, is Percy figures out, "Okay, I can go to the underworld and potentially get my mom out." And So they cut out like probably 20 minutes of screen time to get to the same result, but it cuts out so much development for Percy. So
Yes,
I still
100%.
have 100% faith in Friarden. I mean, he's backing this adaptation up fully versus the movie he wasn't involved in the slightest. So I still have faith. I always have faith in my authors and everything. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Episode 3 is next week. So
Yes, we still have 6 weeks until the end of the season. I like the way the show looks. I like the progression as far as like the step by step as the same as the book. It's just the way they're telling the story that I'm having issues with. Now they can, surprise me and things will probably get better. And so we'll just see how it goes.
yeah.
But
And like I told you, did I tell you? I think I told you. Matt really dug it.
oh, okay.
Um uh
Did he
I
read the
told
book?
somebody this. He did not read the book.
Okay.
So he was like, this is super interesting. Like, I'm really feeling this kind of thing, is what he said.
Oh,
So
I told Abby, I was like, "Hey, there's a new show on Disney Plus. Do you want to watch it?" She's like, "No." I was like, "Okay, I'll just watch it by myself."
well,
Uh,
see, he always gets mad at me if I watch something without him. So like Wheel of Time on Amazon. We watched like the first 2 episodes together and he was like, "Yeah, this ain't for me." So he's letting me watch that one on my own. And like I swear up and down, we watched Reacher in 2022 together, season 1. And he had to go back and rewatch season 1. And I'm saying rewatch because I 100% believe he did not watch. He watched season 1 with me. And he was
I still
like,
need to.
"Yeah,
I think I have like 3 episodes left of that show, of the first season.
oh, Alan Richardson has grown up so much." And he was
He
28 in Smallville, but like the dude has talent now.
he is a much better actor now. Um, but with that, that's going to end our Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief review. We are now going to move towards everything that is, of course, Star Wars. So,
And if
Katie,
you're on YouTube, I'm sorry I keep yawning, y'all. I'm sorry.
um, some news. So the first thing we have up in our Star Wars Alliance chat, um, want to go ahead and say congratulations to Young Jedi Adventures for winning children's and family Emmy winner
Emmys. Yeah.
uh, for outstanding editing. And I agree, the editing is amazing with sound, everything. Absolutely perfect. Still need to finish the season, but congratulations on Young Jedi Adventures for that. Um, you posted this in the chat that the Acolyte has had reshoots this month.
Yes.
This
There was
was
nothing particularly special in it. It was from Bespin Bulletin. I don't want to
yeah.
get too much into like the scenes and stuff because they did have some scene details. But they did have some reshoots. So I still think that could put it on track for May, but everybody's thinking it's gonna be August, when Acolyte premieres. So
You nearly gave me a heart attack. What was it yesterday?
yes,
When
Andor got
you
postponed to 2025. This was in a press release from Disney Plus. And Star Wars News Net Twitter tweet says The Bad Batch season 3 and Tales of the Jedi season 2 confirmed for 2024, comma, but then they capitalized along, so it makes you think it's a new sentence. And it's so they said, comma, along with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. And then a semicolon, Andor season 2 moves into 2025. This is a horrible tweet, people. This is a
it
horrible tweet.
it confused the fuck out of me. So when I read it as along with Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, Andor season 2 moves into 2025. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I'm not going to get any live action Star Wars until 2025 and it's all going to be animation for 2024. That's what I thought it said. And then Travis was the one that was like, no, 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 Clay, Clay, back it up, reread it. It says that Acolyte and Skeleton Crew are confirmed with Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi in 2024. I was like, okay, whew, thank God.
Yes.
That I you nearly gave me a heart attack there.
It does look like Andor is back filming right now. The woman who plays Sybil's whatever his name is, the Imperial enemy guy who like is the inspector guy. His mom took pictures on Instagram and posted those, and so it looks like they're back filming for Andor season 2. Um, so hopefully we'll see some production wrap up things on there soon. The other bit of news that we had, second to last, is Knight Errant, Wraith Squadron, and Order 66 are the next at Legends additions to the Essential Legends collection. So those will be out February 6th, 2024. I'm super excited for the Wraith Squadron one. But I know we'll be talking a lot about John Jackson Miller stuff in February. And so Knight Errant was one of those books. So, um,
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. Last thing from Empire Magazine, Dave Filoni teased Thrawn's future in Star Wars, saying his foil throughout Rebels was Hera. He tells it. He tells Empire, this being, of course, Filoni, pitting the two generals against one another is something that I find interesting. So it looks like Hera is probably going to have a little bit more of a staple role in season two, which is going to be very interesting because of where we left off with our main characters in a completely different galaxy.
yes.
So,
So do you think we'll get them in Mandalorian season 4? I know we'll
ooh,
get Thrawn, but how much Ezra and Hera will we get in Mandalorian?
I wouldn't mind a little bit of Dinjar and Ezra team up. I think that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, he could teach Grogu some new tricks.
Well, I think Ezra is gonna like because even out in a different galaxy with his life on the line and everything else, he was still like kind of cracking jokes and being a little silly. He
Yeah.
was a little bit more of the stoic individual, but I think now that he's kind of home, he's gonna get back to where he was, I hope so, where he might be a little bit more silly. He might, of course, he's grown up, and I think that he will, be an adult when he needs to be an adult and be serious when he needs to. But I hope that he can relax a little bit now being at home. And I think that would be really cool if he was able to be his normal self around individuals like Grogu and Din Djarin.
Yeah, for sure. That is really all the bits of news that we have. So, is it time to
We
talk about Master and Apprentice?
I believe so. I think we're gonna jump right into this. Master and Apprentice. Let me go ahead and I know you probably already have the wiki up. Um,
I do.
but this was written by Claudia Gray, right?
Correct.
Yes, written by Claudia Gray. I want to ask, when was this published?
Um, this was published April 16th, 2019.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought this book was a lot older.
No. I want to
That's
say this is the last
wild.
book this is the last book Claudia wrote before diving into the High Republic stuff.
That's crazy.
Oh no, okay, she had Star Wars Leia Princess of Alderaan.
Okay. So,
Oh,
I'm going to
that
go
was a
ahead
manga. Never mind. She
I'm
did
going to
not
go
have
ahead and
anything.
say this one thing first beforehand. This book is very awkward with the existence of Kristen White's Padawan. Those two books existing together in canon don't make the other like it would be okay with one existing and one not existing, but now that they both exist, they don't make no sense.
Um, why do you think that? Because I disagree, but I wanna hear why you think that.
So in canonic timeline, Padawan is first. Padawan is this conversation piece between Obi-Wan and, I guess, non-communicative conversation between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, being that these two do not work well together, right? Uh, and
For
there's
Master and
like
Apprentice,
this,
yes.
uh, and there's this like weird like Obi-Wan is like, oh, he doesn't like me, he doesn't want me as a Padawan anymore. I'm gonna go do my own thing, and that's when he leaves Coruscant and gets himself stuck on the planet, and throughout goes throughout the adventure and whatnot. And then ultimately at the end, he's like, okay, he really did want to come with me on this mission, and he does like me. And you get the same exact end result as you get in Master and Apprentice. Like they both start the same and in the same in the sense of the relationship between Master and Apprentice, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
So I remember saying that in Padawan, yes, that it kind of felt like we were saying the same. However, kind of looking at it now, I feel like Padawan is more about Obi-Wan believing in himself to be a Jedi, and then Master and Apprentice is mainly about Qui-Gon coming into himself
Yes.
and finding himself. But it's also about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's relationship and them learning how to trust each other fully.
I do agree with you, but I still stand on it feels very much the same as far as the sentiment between the two.
Yes, completely.
So that's why
Um,
it makes it a little awkward. Especially when like it almost feels like a little check mark is being like hit with these two books. It's like, okay, Master and Apprentice need to have confrontation to make them feel like they are uh, not fit for each other. You need to have one High Republic tease and then finish the conflict within your book. And that's what all three of those checks are hit with these books. Um,
yes. My main qualm with Master and Apprentice is the fact that it feels very similar to The Phantom Menace, minus the relationship and minus the prophecy stuff. You have an underage queen, you have uh you have a planet that is desperate for a treaty to kind of interact better with the world. You have a corrupt business environment who is manipulating the planet to try and get what it wants.
Separatist.
Like
Okay.
the prophecy and like what is his name? Avros, I think.
Oh my god, Obi-Wan goes into the freaking ship and shoots it with oh my god.
It's literally
Oh
it feels
my
so
god.
similar to The Phantom Menace, and, like, if you read Claudia Gray's stuff, it's like Claudia is so freaking talented, but then yet we take this where this is 8 like, pretty much 8 years before The Phantom Menace. This takes place in 40 BBY, and
Mhm.
we literally have an epilogue in The Phantom Menace, and it just feels like we going back and forth between, like,
So
negotiations
s-
and
so
stuff.
I will say this, jumping a little bit ahead, the epilogue, um, where it jumps into the future at Qui-Gon's funeral,
Yes.
I don't like it.
You didn't like it?
No. Like I like because you end on and again, this may just be my whole thing, and listeners, you know me. I always want the happy ending for the Star Wars universe, but like you end on such a good note between the two. It's like you could have left some room there for another adventure for Obi Wan Kenobi and Qui Gon Jinn because she
But
like
y
they
they
even
do
mention it.
have room. They do
You
have
even
room.
mention it in that epilogue. Obi-Wan is like, "Oh, I don't remember any time before that one mission all those years ago. It's every mission after." It's like, I want those missions. I don't want to hear about Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral just yet. Like you're jumping ahead a little bit, you know?
I still think they're waiting to one day give us the Obi-Wan Satine adventure.
I would be okay with that.
I would pay
But
good money for that. Del Rey, Random House Worlds, whatever your name is.
but with
Wink, wink.
with this book, I I dug the prophecy stuff. Um Only because, not just because of the nameless stuff, but because it cemented who Qui-Gon will be and how important he is to the eventual Skywalker saga that we all know and love. Because of these prophecies, and I do have a list here. There are a total of 6 prophecies in this book. So, I want your opinion on what these prophecies mean. So, the first prophecy says, "She who will be born in darkness will give birth to darkness." Now, there is a throwaway explanation of who this might be in the actual book. Obi-Wan explains it to Qui-Gon Jinn, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's clearly this person because of what happened at this one time or whatever." Is there any person that you might think it is?
Um, no. I'm terrible with these prophecy stuff.
Well, I looked it up in these websites and stuff. So this website is saying we have we run into this prophecy already? Could this be Leia born to Darth Vader and then given birth to Kylo Ren?
Maybe.
So could be a
Yeah.
possibility there. Prophecy 2. When the Kyber is not Kyber shines forth, the time of prophecy will be at hand. This is clearly in the book. That's one of the very
Yeah.
key plot points is there's 2 jewel thieves, which I absolutely love them in this book. Um it's Pax and uh
Oh, I know her name. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
I just remember Pax because I just love him as a character. Um, it, did did it start? Did it start with a
Starts with
D?
an R.
Rahara, and Pax.
Yes.
So, they're the jewel thieves, but they thought that they came upon this refinery of Kyber, and it wasn't Kyber. It was a different type of crystal. Uh, and it plays a huge part into this book. But there is a prophecy here, and even I love the relationship between, because we do get these moments in the book also that were like years prior with Dooku as Qui-Gon Jinn's master, and them looking at the book of prophecies or the holocron of prophecies, and we get these small moments where Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan are talking about these prophecies. So I like the parallel there and how Qui-Gon Jinn is always in the center of it. I do like that. Um Prophecy 3. When the righteous lose the light, evil once dead shall return. This one was a little weird to me. Um the website has the explanation of this prophecy gets more and gets me more than most. Even in the chosen one prophecy, it feels like something that could have a lot of weight behind it. Does this refer to Luke, Ben, someone else? This is a prophecy I would want to dive further into.
Repeat the prophecy again.
When the righteous lose the light, evil once dead shall return. So,
I feel like
in
that's talking about the Jedi.
it could be the Jedi. it could be Luke, considering the fact that, we are reading the Jedi Academy where they did, reference the fact that at one point Luke did fall into the dark side, being the right hand of a resurrected emperor. We have Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, you know, he was, I guess, righteous in some aspect, being good and then turning evil. Um, so it could be a lot of different things, but I do like the Jedi as a whole. I
Yeah,
do like
because I
that
feel like
explanation.
if the Jedi hadn't fallen and were, like, more apt to discover who the Sith were and kind of handle it a little more appropriately, I feel like the evil wouldn't have risen and Luke wouldn't have had his problem, um, with Ben. So I think the catalyst ultimately is for the darkness will rise, I think is what you said.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's 100% the Jedi Order of
Yeah.
the Republic.
Prophecy number 4. One will ascend to the highest of the Jedi despite the foreboding of those who would serve with him. Now, uh, uh,
Anakin, Mace Windu, foreboding.
well, yeah, yeah. This website does say, "Oh, that sounds like a lot like Anakin." In the book Master and Apprentice, the other Jedi that we follow in this story,
Rael Averroes.
Rail,
He was,
Rail,
and this is a correction from last week where I said he was Qui-Gon's first apprentice. He was Dooku's first apprentice
yeah,
before Dooku took on Qui-Gon.
yeah, Rail Averos. I do like him as a character. He kind of like reminds me of, oh, what's his name? Season 4 of Clone Wars. Um, oh, what's his name? That is racist to clones. Um, I don't know his
Oh,
name.
it's
He has
Darkness
the
on Umbara.
Yeah, he holds the two double bladed lightsabers.
Yes, I got the episode title right. Jedi Pong Krell.
Ponkrell. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He reminds me of
Thanks,
Ponkrell
Travis.
for
Travis is in the chat. He got it too.
I don't know why, but it he just reminds me of Ponkrell. And I was like, "Oh, that would be so cool." Um so uh
Especially with the fact that he doesn't follow Dooku. Dooku invites him along, like, if he wants to leave the Jedi Order, and Rail's like, "I'm gonna go back to
I
Coruscant,
think I'm gonna
thanks."
go back to Coruscant, which I do love because of a conversation that him and Qui-Gon have in the middle of this book. There's a moment where they're talking a little bit about what's going on, plus the prophecies and everything else. Rail tells Qui-Gon, he's like, "Hey, did you ever think about what this prophecy means of talking about the chosen one?" He says, "If this prophecy comes to pass, that means the dark is going to be just as powerful as the light. So it doesn't matter which side we choose." And I think that's a little bit of a tease of him knowing what Dooku is doing and the path that he's about to walk on, and him trying to decide whether he wants to follow Dooku or follow the Jedi.
Mhm.
Like, I think that in this book, specifically with Rail, you you're supposed to look at Rail as a renegade, as a rogue, as somebody who doesn't care about the rules. And then by the end of the book, he's like, "No, Qui-Gon, Qui-Gon was right. Like, we choose the light for a reason." And I love that kind of turn for the character.
Yes. Travis brings a quote from the book. He said, "We
That's
don't
the
choose the
exact
light
quote.
because we want to win. We choose it because it is light." Yeah, I completely agree. Probably one of my favorite things from the book. Even though this is lower on my Claudia Gray list, like she has some very good quotes that come out of
Mhm.
here.
Yeah.
She's a fantastic writer. no matter how many issues I have with this one. I
But
and I feel so bad having issues because I remember I think this was like one of the first times I interacted with Snell and Taylor was during their review of Master and Apprentice, and Snell loves this book like with a passion. Um but yeah, I for me I'm just like
so Travis does bring up, of the 3 Padawan focused prequels, you have Padawan, you have Master and Apprentice, and then you have Brotherhood. He says, "I like Brotherhood more, but this is a good one." Out of the 3, Katie and I had issues with Padawan. Um, I definitely feel like this book and that book are a little bit redundant, but Katie explained some things, so I was like, okay, they can exist within the same realm, whatever. Um, I really do enjoy this book. You know, Katie kind of opened my mind's eye with this just being Phantom Menace 8 years prior. But
I mean, am I wrong though? Am I wrong?
it when you look at it, it's definitely Phantom Menace, which I think is hilarious. And like even the hunt is just the pod race. That's all it is. It's the
Yep,
pod race. That's
yep.
hilarious. Absolutely insane. Um but the fifth prophecy, I want to go back to these because this is one of our biggest moments talking about this book and the High Republic and the connections and everything. Prophecy number 5: only through sacrifice of many Jedi will the Order cleanse the sin done to the Nameless. The danger of the past is not past, but sleeps in an egg. When the egg cracks, it will threaten the galaxy entire. When the force itself sickens, past and future must split and combine. A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance of the force be restored. So I thought that the chosen one prophecy was an entirely different thing from the nameless prophecy, but it's one very long prophecy that can really be cut into different parts here. So, first part, the Jedi, the sacrifice of many Jedi will the order cleanse the sin done to the nameless, not by the nameless, to the nameless. That's very odd for me. Um, and then the
You could
danger
think
of
of
the
this you
oh,
could
go
think of
ahead.
this in like two ways. Like you could go, okay, there's a sin done to the nameless that we haven't seen done before. Or you can say this was Marta, Sunshine, Dobbs, and them all just pulling the nameless from planet
From the
X.
planet,
And that was the sin done. But the Jedi are ultimately held responsible as the caretakers, the main caretakers of the
the
Force
force in the
and the ones
galaxy.
involved.
Ooh, okay, okay. I like the explanation. I like it. The danger of the past is not past, but it sleeps in an egg. That egg being, of course, the creatures of the nameless. When the egg cracks, it will threaten the galaxy entire. We have been seeing that here in the High
Use
Republic.
three. Yeah.
When the force itself sickens, past and future must split and combine. This was an interesting line. Of course, when the force sickens, when we are seeing the individuals get consumed by the nameless, it makes them sick, it makes them ill, it makes them crazy, it does a whole lot of different things. They are consuming the force. Like the force is no longer existing within beings when the nameless feed on them. Past and future must split and combine. What do you think that means?
I think, and a lot of people were talking about how this prophecy mainly applies when it was announced that phase two was going to go back in time. That was like, oh, so past and future must split and then combine. Um, is that was talking about, okay, so we're gonna see a lot of characters from phase two come into phase three and kind of unite to help free the force and kind of help the Nameless get back to where they were. I don't know if that's the case anymore because I feel like with what we got in phase 2, it's very different from what we were expecting with this prophecy, I feel like.
It is. Um, I'm gonna go ahead for those who haven't beaten Jedi Survivor. I'm gonna name a little bit of spoilers here, or talk a little bit of spoilers. So skip ahead just a little bit. In Jedi Survivor, the new PS5 game, um, the uh, the High Republic mention is almost literal visions of the High Republic path. There is a uh, hyperspace corridor that opens up to a planet that literally is in an non-inhabitant planet. Um, and so it like kind of opens up some doors for some stuff in the future. But I'm pretty sure I said this, but if I'm not, I'll go ahead and say it now. What if the nameless become a problem for Rey and the new Jedi Council? And
Um,
so the line past and future must split and combine. Rey is learning a lot as one of the last Jedi about the past, about being a Jedi, bringing up the council again, or a possible council. And she learns of the nameless. Like, it could be a possibility. Couldn't I could be throwing a curveball for sure, but maybe.
I I don't think that's possible. Because I feel like Claudia Gray didn't know where Rey was gonna end up after The Rise of Skywalker because this came out the same year as The Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker was December 2019. This was April 2019. Um, so I think that's a tough ask
Hmm.
if that's mega future planning, plus knowing probably at the time Lucasfilm was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna be using Rey, Poe, and Finn, and like going off in our own direction." I think this is purely like this is setting up for the publishing environment because I think the way you have to think about this is the chosen one line comes after this
Hmm.
line. So it's like a two like it's following in step.
Okay.
It's not jumping ahead. Because I think to say like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna plug this," I if it really was meant to be, "Oh, Rey and her future Jedi Order is going to discover it," we will never see that. Never ever.
Okay. Okay. Now, like, just like for me, I always think of like the craziest theories.
I
Like
know.
when I first read the book, when I heard or when I yeah, because I was listening to this on Audible, when I heard past and future must split and combine, I was thinking of freaking what is it called? The space between worlds or whatever it is.
World Between Worlds.
Yeah, the world between worlds. Like I thought about that, and I was like, "Oh, they're gonna bring it. Like it's gonna be." Like, I was thinking all sorts of stuff. So it's just what my brain does. Um, and then, of course, the chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the force be restored. Of course, being Anakin Skywalker, creating Luke Skywalker, and then of course we get Rey Skywalker. The Skywalker family is that gets that balance. When I read Past and Future must split and combine, my first thought was Rey and Kylo splitting Luke's saber, only for Rey to repair it. Likely not the case though. Interesting thought. What do you think?
Yeah, I could see it. Especially with like the fact that we had gotten The Last Jedi. Though, yeah, she would have probably been writing it after The Last Jedi had come out, so I could totally see it. Plus, she was involved in The Last Jedi planning with Leia, Princess of Alderaan. So could totally be feasible that that was meant for it. And I mean, if that's the case, then we've seen it. I just don't know what that has to do with the Nameless or the Chosen One. Because again, as everyone always likes to tell me, the Chosen One is Anakin Skywalker. It is not the Skywalker name. Yeah, I think if you're going towards the Chosen One, then I feel like the Chosen One being the Skywalker name and that balance that's achieved at the end of the 9 movies, I feel like that's like the balance ultimately
Yeah.
versus Anakin's balance in the end stage of things. So I can see that with my interpretation of Chosen One, but I was going off of like everybody else's. I like that.
Yeah. I ultimately think it is the Skywalker name. It's just it makes the most sense.
Especially because you could consider them combining to be the dyad in the Force.
Yeah.
So
Very true. Very, very true. And then there's the sixth prophecy. He who learns to conquer death will, through his greatest student, live again. This, of course, being Qui Gon Jinn. Travis also mentioned this in the chat. He says, "He who learns, of course, he gives the prophecy, and he says this ties back to an early draft of Episode One, where Qui Gon is called Obi-Wan, his apprentice, taking his name in his death.
fun fact I
That's
didn't know.
interesting. I didn't know that either." Uh, Travis also brings something up right here. He says, the Nameless could be the kid from the end of The Last Jedi. The idea that prior to the Jedi dying, that kid would likely have been taken at birth. So, a lot of theories, a lot of things that can be connected. I mean, we're all fans. We're gonna wear our tinfoil hats and say wild things. But the explanation that this website has for the sixth prophecy says this looks like one that could be directly related to Qui Gon. It would be very interesting if while Qui Gon was studying the prophecies, this one was about him, or did the prophecy only become about him because he read it and learned that there is another type of life after death? The big point of this book was both Dooku and Qui Gon at some point in their lives started to look at these prophecies as words of fiction. And they're just like, oh, these are metaphors. These aren't to be taken literally. Um, Eventually, which I thought was really weird, Qui-Gon gets a vision from the Force. And apparently, this rarely, if not ever, happens. So, uh,
Yes. Sifo Dyas and Dooku Jedi Lost had the visions more frequently. And was even like he worked with a master who was gifted in the prophecy like division, but that's why Sifo Dyas ultimately ends up dead, is because of the council rejecting the vision aspect.
mhm.
Um, and I mean, even if you look at like the Yoda comic, for instance, I think it's Jodie Hauser's iteration, her 3 issues, um, dives into like a Wookiee that gets a vision of the mortal enemy of the
Oh,
Wookiees.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember those. It was like 2 issues or 3 issues. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 3 issues.
Of him attacking
Yeah.
him in his sleep or something. Yeah, I remember that.
So it's commonplace, but it's like you have to learn how to interpret it, which Dooku was working with Qui-Gon in order to do. So it's like, yeah,
Travis says from Clone Wars, we get the implication that life after death was unheard of, and Qui Gon communing with Yoda was shocking to the Jedi. We also see him communing with Yoda in Clone Wars, which was very, very cool. Um, I dig this just because, again, like when it comes to Qui Gon, just this random Jedi in Phantom Menace one day, and he becomes one of the most important parts of Star Wars history. So I dig this. I really love him as a character. Um, and I love the idea of him, and we've talked about this before, him being a little bit of the rebel. And when they do ask him to be on the council, like the council does take that into consideration. And they're like, you will bring, and Qui-Gon's like, diplomacy? They're like, no, 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 balance. You will disagree with us, and that's okay. Um, but also hearing that Yoda was not for Qui-Gon
Yep.
being on the council was very interesting. Uh, how did you take that and feel about that?
Um, I definitely think that's just Yoda wanting the council to stay in his ways. I do I'm always dying for, like, a Yoda biography. Like, just to kind of chronicle his life story. Because man, the man is 900 years old. He dies 900 at the end of Return of the Jedi. Like, what has the man seen? We have seen him at, like, 600, at 750, or, like, the math's off on that, but you get my point.
Yeah.
We've seen him in, like, his the height of the Jedi's power, so what about, like, him growing up? What causes him to change? And I imagine we'll get some more of that in The Acolyte, honestly. So
Travis is still talking in the chat. He says, when George said Jar Jar is the key, I saw it that Qui-Gon's optimism in taking a chance on him is what grants them victory. Coming full circle when Luke takes a chance on the Ewoks.
yes.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Um, but I know we haven't talked a very great detail of this book. We always want you guys to read it for yourselves, have a great time with it. Um, I, there was just a lot to talk about with these prophecies, and I think they're very, very fun. They're fun to think about. In the
And
consideration that some of these haven't come to pass yet, is I think something that's very fun too.
yeah, and I mean, ultimately, like, when you take a look at it, like, besides Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship kind of building to where they finally fully trust each other, the prophecies are the best part of this because, like, even you get, like, the false kyber or whatever they call the crystal, um, you get that introduction, which I thought was gonna be so interesting, but then you turn it around immediately in the same book to go, "Oh, yeah, it really means nothing because you can just make weapons out of it that can then defeat the shields that it builds."
I love that. I love that. There, because
I hated that so much.
well, I love it and I hate it because for me, I love the shield aspect because of course in Knights of the Old Republic, shields on characters were very famous. It was the only way you as a character holding a lightsaber would be able to like not be like super OP and just slicing everybody down. So seeing the shields here, I thought that was very fun. And it goes full circle because in the very beginning of this book, we have a confrontation with the Hutts and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And you learn about the black market of these crystals and shields and everything, going basically to the Hutts and people that they're connected to. And so I really love that. But the idea that, like, hey, we're going to completely do a 180 on these crystals and make them completely useless because I don't want to get another 9 to 10 books about lightsabers not being badass anymore. Like that would have been boring. Like it just would have.
No, but you could have had a little more discovery into, like, the weapon creation of this false kyber to, like, be counteracted because, like, you just think about it and, like, I think they've just missed opportunities because, and you haven't read this book, but Thrawn Alliances also gets into where, the Separatists are making battle droids, or no, No, there's a factory that is creating lightsaber-proof stormtrooper armor.
Ah, okay, okay.
And so, like, when did Thrawn Alliances come out? I feel like it was a little before that, 2018. So July 24th, 2018. So you had like these really two cool like weapons that like make a whole lot of sense. But in Thrawn Alliances, the factory is blown up, and Anakin never hears about. I believe it was stormtrooper proof lightsaber armor. It might have been droids. Either way, but it was like your first inclination. I think it was the stormtrooper because it's your first inclination, like, oh, who's making a lightsaber proof stormtrooper armor? Like, what does this mean? And
Yeah.
stuff. And like he and Thrawn and Padme blow the factory up so they don't have to worry about it. And then you get this one where it's like, okay, here's another potential item. And obviously, you can't use these weapons in the movies because the movies have already come out. So it's like, what does it matter in the end scheme of things? But you could have built like a really cool trilogy about like, oh crap, we have this weapon. And I mean, there's 8 years for Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to like do research into the false Kyber and try to build something
Like
else.
I get the sentiment of being of I guess the satisfaction of them finally being like, "Oh, why don't we just use the crystal itself?" You know? I
Yeah,
guess that could have been something in this book, but it's totally done on accident. I think that's probably what you hate the most about it, is just happenstance. Like,
yeah,
it's Claudia Gray's MacGuffin in the book. It really is. It's just like, "Oh, this very, big thing that I made, like, could basically stop all Jedi. Well, actually, let's just throw it away. Boom, look at that. Obi-Wan accidentally has the lightsaber of it.
yeah.
But because of that, it ultimately makes it to where Obi-Wan's lightsaber is useless because even Obi-Wan is like, okay, I can't use this because I don't know how unstable this crystal is compared to my lightsaber and everything else that's, a component within it. So he doesn't use it for the
Right.
rest of the book.
Travis said, I believe the Clone Wars episode with the Zilla Beast was the first time in canon where they hinted to lightsaber proof tech, with Palpatine taking interest to the beast. Yes, I think that was the first canon mention as well, Travis, because in Legends you have this stuff called cortosis, which was an ore that was used. It's a big feature in the Hand of Thrawn duology. Um,
Okay.
so, uh, and then I think, yeah, Clone Wars, that was like the first time. But yeah, I'm always really, and maybe that's why I like Legends so much. I love like different weapons. I find like them fascinating. And so just to like kind of pick it up and go, oh yeah, there's this thing. But oh yeah, it also means nothing. And just like throw it out. I was just like, oh
I mean, I thought it was a cool like visual thing. If I don't know if you're the type of reader that is able to visualize things, but like the idea of Obi-Wan just like turning on his lightsaber and it being orange, like that's pretty cool. Especially with, of course, the looming threat of this vision that Qui-Gon Jinn is having. Like he's so worried about what's going to happen during this treaty ceremony, and then Obi-Wan being able to save himself, I think was really really cool. Um, but like going back to Rail Averos, like we have this individual who is um doesn't play by the rules with anything. He was a individual, a master to somebody. He did have an apprentice. He did have a Padawan that was killed by a droid with uh, a splicer dart, I believe, is what they called it. Um, Basically, just was non-functional but could still have brain capacity before she died, and she got to see her master just kind of run away and save everybody else while she died. And it was very traumatic and clearly very traumatic for him still within this book, because it still haunted him until the very end. um, and that's ultimately what kind of kept him from really seeing the princess for who she was. um, but I like Rail's story. I really, really do. Um, it was very weird, just like the way he was introduced with uh being in the bar, like trying to like talk up this girl. Uh oh, she has a big chest. Maybe she'll have some fun tonight. Like it was
Yeah.
very odd. Um but also being the non-traditional Jedi with, threatening people with his lightsaber. Um because he was also in a position of power, which was very weird. Um I thought that he was just like a bodyguard type of thing, but because of the age of the princess and there still be needing a ruler, he was basically the ruler of a planet for 8 years, which is
Yep.
wild.
Especially when you think about him being a Jedi, like, the Jedi said, "Oh, yeah, we hate power, but yes, we're gonna send this Jedi Knight who has PTSD and all this other emotional crap probably, and he's gonna become the ruler of this planet."
Not only that, his master was Count Dooku. We're going to give him this position.
Right, but Dooku at the time was not, like because Dooku had left the Jedi Order for 2 years in, like, the main timeline of this book.
Oh, that's true. That's true. He hadn't left at that point when Rail had gone uh to that planet.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, I thought it was really because even like Yoda and Qui-Gon talked about it a little bit, and like Yoda was kind of trying to explain like their reasoning. And he's like, well, we kind of messed up on this one.
Mhm.
But I think that is it for the book. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave this book out of 5 stars because of Goodreads. I gave this a 4.1. I think that there was some pacing stuff and some other things. And of course, my first initial reactions to the idea of this book and Padawan kind of being redundant to each other might go a little bit lower now that I know that is Phantom Menace, 1.5. Um, but
And
it's
remember, Padawan and this are meant for different audiences because of the young
that is
adult
also
versus
very true.
adult.
That is also very, very true. But I still had a very fun time reading this. The moments of Obi-Wan Kenobi connecting with the Force for the first time, as far as like in battle meditation, and with the I forgot what they were writing, but it's basically the same beast that he is writing in episode 3.
Bractal.
The Varactals, yes. I thought that was really, really fun. Um, and I will say Claudia Gray has a very fun sense of humor. Where like there's moments where I was laughing out loud because of like the thoughts that Obi-Wan is having through like flying through the ship and like screaming and yelling and stuff. I thought that was really, really fun. Um but yeah, it's a great book. I recommend it to anybody who is, of course, big into the Star Wars canon. And it gives you a fun time with these prophecies, which is kind of one of the big staples that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. I think I agree with pretty much everything you think, though the fact that this takes so many plot threads from The Phantom Menace, and y'all can hate me all you want, I hate The Force Awakens. So, it feels like such a retread of A New Hope. So, for me, this is in the exact same boat. This feels very much like a retread of The Phantom Menace. It's just not for me. The last thing Travis has, he said, one thing the book does, it shows both characters at opposite mindsets to that of episode one. Qui-Gon worried about the future, Obi-Wan too fixated on the present situation. Yeah. And I do like how Claudia kind of has Obi-Wan share like, "Oh yeah, I was such a rebel, and then they gave me to you," and like, because Qui-Gon's like telling him like, "Oh yeah, you're such a rule follower," and he's like, "I'm really not. I'm a rebel," and then they figure out like, "Oh, the council handed me to you because the only way to fix a rebel is to hand him to a rebel, which makes the Padawan rebel a rule follower in
Yeah.
order to rebel."
Yeah, I thought that was really, really fun. And they both have like this very epiphany moment that's like, oh, that's exactly what they did. That's so clever. That's so smart. And it was just a really fun moment.
Yeah. But yeah, I think for me, this is probably like a 3.5, 3.25. Again, it's probably The Fallen Star came out. Fallen Star is super short. I would probably say Fallen Star is maybe below this, but like this is like second to last on my list of Cloudy Gray books. I still think she's super talented. 3.25 is still not a bad book to have um on the list. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Clay, where can they find you?
Of course, you can always find me at Fanboy Clay on Twitter, on any social media, really. Haven't had the time to stream, so not too worried about that right now. When it comes to my other show, Ranger Alliance, the holidays are coming up. Me and Joe are very, very busy, so we're going to hold off on our next episode until probably either the week after Christmas or starting in January. So, Ranger Alliance will be making a return, just not yet. So December is kind of like our relaxing month.
The week after Christmas is the start of January. So
I mean, it's tomato tomato, you know.
thank you very much, Travis. Travis has a great review. May the force of others be with you. Thanks. And Merry Christmas, Travis. And if you're listening to this, Merry Christmas, you guys. Um, we are still planning on having an episode next week. We will be talking about Jedi Academy number 2, which is Dark Apprentice, I
Yes,
think.
Dark Apprentice.
Yes, I always get them confused because I always want to say Dark Apprentice is third. Um,
And I think
but yes,
Champions of the Force is third, right? That's the title?
yes,
Yes.
yes. So we will be talking about that one second week of January. Um, but yes. So next week, come find us for our review of the Legends book, Dark Apprentice. Y'all, you can always find me on most social media platforms. It is at Slice of Katie. I'm going to be trying to use Threads more because I'm just fed up with Twitter at this point. I don't like some of the ads that I'm getting. I can't block them. I can't mute them. I can't report them and get them to go away. So yeah, I'm just about done. um so yes, that is where you can find me. This show you can find most of the time it's on Twitter, at Star Wars Lands with the 8 in the wars. Very important, don't forget it. The hotline for the show where you can text or leave us a voicemail, just remember to leave us some way to address you. It is 830-538-4828. You can also email us at starwarsalliance@gmail.com. There is no A in the wars. Remember that all our usernames, no A in the wars. Because that's just the best way to do it, is to have your username the same across all your platforms. Makes business cards really simple. I'm just kidding. We don't have a business card. But yes. Thanks for a lively chat, Travis. Andrew, I know you were here earlier. I did say hi to you in the chat, but we had some issues setting up the live stream, so we had the wrong time for when it was supposed to start. So do apologize about that, but thanks for being here when you were. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great day or night, whatever time of day you're listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the force be with you.